just love to know what he did for 900 years?
He lived for seven generations.
Yes. And yet, but we don't have any clue what he did. Now, you may ask, the question is, was there any significance? It's not significant to the promise. See, God's writing a book that's going to detail the promise. He could have written volumes. Well, who wrote Genesis anyway? Who wrote Genesis? Moses. When did Moses write Genesis? How many years after creation? Over 1,000 years. Now, what?
While you're talking about this board meeting, one of the problems that I had in my early years of studying the Bible was that I read the Bible as it was in chronological order. Mm-hmm. And it's not always that way.
That's true.
In other words, we got an example of that is we got the four books, the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are written by four different people looking at the same thing. Well, you got this same thing going on in the Old Testament too. You got Isaiah looking at the same thing as one of the Chronicles the Kings were looking at.
Correct.
And then you get over to one of my biggest problems was Nehemiah, Esther, and Nehemiah, Esther, and Ruth.
Okay, who would like to come up here? And these are the books of the Bible, excluding 3. And Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, and Numbers are down there, and Deuteronomy. Who would like to come up here and put the books of the Bible in chronological order of history? Would you like to do that? Chronologically order. Can somebody want to do this?
Well, sometimes we assume that's the way it is.
But I'm saying, can anybody do that? Rick, can you do that? Who can do that?
I could do part of it, but I wouldn't get it all.
Huh?
I could do part of it, but I wouldn't get it all.
Huh?
I wouldn't get it all right either.
Okay.
Because you're going to run into trouble when you got the northern tribe and southern.
Well, what I'm saying, what I want,
riding the whips and so on.
Be nice. Okay. All right.
But I mean,
but this is true. Chronologically, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and what's the next book? Next 3 books.
Ruth.
Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. All right. Now, what comes after it? What is the first book in the Bible? Chronologically.
Job. They claim Job.
Job. He came before Moses.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, chronologically then, what comes next? What comes chronologically after Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther? Chronologically, biblically, not the way we have the Bible. What chronologically comes after?
They're at the end.
That's the end. That's the end book.
They're before.
That's the end book. What comes after 1st and 2nd Chronicles? Ezra, Nehemiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, and all the rest of the book. And then the last book chronologically in the Bible is Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. But you have to look and see which one of those prophets prophesying to northern tribe, which one prophesying to the southern tribe. And they were contemporaries. They were contemporaries. Yeah, there was 2 or 3 of them.
Contemporaries with one another in tribes. So what I'm saying is, when we look at the Bible, biblically, chronologically, everything took place before Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. All of the other prophets were before Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. Nehemiah is the last historical book in the Bible. Everything else comes before.
You have to put the Psalms and Proverbs.
Somewhere in there.
The Psalms where David is, where
right.
the ministry was. in Solomon.
Psalms would have to be somewhere probably between First and Second Kings, right?
Yeah.
And Song of Solomon would have to be somewhere after the Chronicles, because that's when Solomon came on the scene. Right? And even in these books, First Samuel would not have. Probably the Chronicles. Probably Chronicles would do all that. I mean, with Northern Kingdom, the Southern Kingdom. Now, but what we're saying.
They helped me along with that.
So that, yes. I bet I messed that up good, didn't I? I've been hitting everything lately. Okay, so let's look at from here. Kaiser gives 10 distinctives of his promise plan proposal. Number 1, the doctrine of the promised Messiah is found throughout all the scriptures, and not just in isolated or section passages as understood by the promise fulfillment scheme. Number 2, the Old Testament Messiah teaching was regarded as the development of a single promise, repeated and unfolded through the centuries with numerous specifications and in multiple forms, but always with the same essential core. Now these proposals that when we get into each book of the Bible or each section of the Bible, he's going to expose that. You remember when you were in school, the Great Expectations we had to read. Now, the hard part was we were supposed to explain what was been going on in that book. There was a central theme from start to finish. And we were asked, what's the theme? All we saw was events. We didn't see what is the author trying to do here. And so, what he is proposing here is that there is a central. Number 3, the New Testament writers equated this single defined promise, definite promise, as the one made to Abraham when God called him from Ur to the Chaldeans. So from the promise that Abraham was given by God, the promise is traced in throughout. Number 4, while the New Testament writers occasionally speaks of promises using the plural form of the word, the manner in which they do so does not weaken the case for a single definitive promise of the Scriptures. Number 5, the New Testament writers regarded this simple, definite promise composed of many specifications to be the theme of both the Old and the New Testament. Number 6, the promise made to Abraham is represented as both being partially fulfilled in the events, the Exodus, and yet still to be fully fulfilled in the distant future. Number 7, the New Testament writers not only declared that the promised plan of God is seen through the whole Old Testament, but they adopted the Old Testament phraseology as part of their own way of expressing God's revelation to them. We use words that way today. We say, have you been saved? We say, have you been redeemed? What is the express word that we can use throughout Scripture? What one word can we use that will express a person being saved throughout the whole Bible? That's the key. What word is used in the Old Testament that's also used in the New Testament that expresses how a person comes to Christ? How did a person come to Christ in the Old Testament? The same way that they come in the New Testament. One word in the Old Testament is used in the New Testament, that when that word is used, it's related to how a person is saved and born again. Is it? Is the word believe in the Old Testament?
Faith
Faith,
is one, thus shall live by faith.
faith, they were saved by faith. I've said for years, people were saved differently in the Old Testament than the New Testament because I didn't understand.
No.
I didn't understand what that meant. But once you grasp it, you kind of get it. Number 8, the New Testament writers teach that the promise of God is operating eternally and is invocably. Now, in order to believe number 8, you have to believe what? Every fundamental Christian has to be number 8. If you believe number 8, you have to believe your position theologically has to be, you have to be a premillennialist.
Yeah.
You have to be. Now, if you don't believe number 8, then you can be an amillennial or you can be a postmillennial. In other words, you don't have to believe in the millennial. If you don't believe number 8, you can be a non-millennial, a 1,000-year reign. You don't have to believe it. And as a matter of fact, it also means that you don't have to believe in the tribulation. And did you realize that most churches are amillennialists?
Yeah.
Most Southern Baptist churches are amillennialists. Most 90% Reformed Baptists, reformers are
Tell us what that means.
you know what premillennialist means?